Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. Hello, Beer Geeks. It's Friday. It's 5pm. Welcome to another episode of the Friday 5pm podcast. I hope you've got a beer in your hand. I have 12 litres of New England IPA in a corny keg next to me. What have you got, Brad?
Blimey. I haven't got quite that much, but I have got the little crowler that you gave me of our homebrew last Friday.
Yeah, Brad, I gave that to you a week ago.
I know. I've drunk most of it, and I shared it with my girlfriend and my friend Tommy. And I obviously knew it was marvellous. They also thought it was marvellous, and it actually travelled really well. It stayed carbonated. I think I drank it maybe on Sunday. So a couple of days after you'd given it to me, and it was tasting banging still, mate.
Good. Well, yeah, we purged the hell out of that to make sure there was no oxygen left. I'm intrigued to know how much oxygen's now in it and how flat it is.
I've got it on hand. I'm going to... they're quite hard to get into. It's a hydro flask.
Yeah, that was great. I picked that up at Red Hook Brewery when I went over there in 2016. The Red Hook IPA was my Eureka beer.
Was it? Gateway?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's quite an old school IPA now. Probably a little bit.
Ooh,
a little bit
did you
safe.
hear that?
Yeah.
I just got a bit of a.
How brown is it though, Brad?
Nice bit of smoke on it, Johnny. Yeah, it's pretty much flat, but it does taste fucking amazing still.
There you go. Wow, we really purged that.
Woo! Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad that it's got a week's worth of life, even in a growler, because we've got some bottles that I just got a text this morning saying that the bottles had arrived safely at Verdant. So they're going to be tasting it in a couple of days, ready for our video next week.
That is exciting, mate.
I'm excited, but I'm also incredibly nervous because there are some little flaws in there, which I think most drinkers would be like, hey, this is an amazing IPA, but somebody like James, who is the head brewer at Verdant, is probably going to be like, There's some astringency, a little bit of boozy heat in there that shouldn't be there.
The boozy heat is definitely in there. I just got a little bit of that when I had a swig. But
it's going to get worse as the carbonation goes as well.
This is a homebrew. It's unreal how good it is. I know maybe it looks a bit hammy in the video, but my genuine reaction to this beer is like astonishment.
Yeah, it is mind-blowing. But let's not give too much more away because obviously that episode hasn't gone live. But I think you can tell from the first video that it was going to be a success because we put the fact that it was a success in the first 20 seconds. Did a little tease. So yeah, it has come out really, really well. But we'll be breaking down the flavours and obviously talking more about the yeast because it is a sponsored video. Just to be super clear, like we were given the opportunity to try that and we were paid to try it. But, I mean, we don't need to say how good that yeast is because it makes some of the best IPA in the world at Verdant and now at Unity. Elusive Brewing, lots of other breweries using it. It's a magic yeast.
Secret sauce.
Secret sauce. That's exactly what it is. So yeah, as you may have guessed, on Wednesday we released a homebrew video all about Verdant's new collaboration yeast with Lallemand Brewing, which is a global yeast supplier. We have been, it's our second homebrew video of the year, and it's done really, really well. Again, like you guys love homebrew content, and we we take a slightly different slant. We try and put a narrative on it. We try and make it interesting both to people who are never going to brew it and indeed useful to people who are definitely going to brew it. And hopefully you'll agree we got that right in this episode.
I think so, mate. I think, there's a bit of jeopardy in there. I mean, we obviously have a little bit of a history with New England IPAs, being some of the first in the UK to be brewing it.
Yeah.
But this is obviously such a hype style, and it's kind of hard to homebrew. That we kind of wanted to explore how the trials and tribulations of brewing it at home would work, and how the Lallemand yeast could help that. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, it's really tough to make. And there's two styles that are really hard to make at home. One is pale lager, whether it's Pilsner or Helles or Vienna, and the other style is New England IPA. And the reason for that is they are both super susceptible to oxidation, and they both also require very careful temperature control. Of both the fermentation, but all beer needs that, but actually the cold crashing, so a long time at very cold temperatures, which is impossible to achieve unless you've got a homebrew fridge or an incredibly cold cellar. So they're very hard to make, and we wanted to make this as easy as possible. And one of the ways of doing that is using this yeast, which is incredibly flexible, loaded with flavour so that you don't have to use so many hops or get such good hop extraction, and using some techniques that reduce the oxidation. Clearly, everybody in the comments knows all this because we've had so many comments asking for tips and discussing things that we discussed. It's turned into a bit of a homebrew forum, this comment section, which we are all for on these kinds of videos. We'll dive into them in a second. But yeah, so this week's video, all we did was we talked about the origins of the yeast with Verdant's head brewer James, and then we chose our hops, and then we did the brew day. So all the cellar side of it, all the really tricky stuff is coming in episode 2, and you'll see that I wrestled with that quite a bit. And learned a hell of a lot about CO2 regulators. I got through, basically my CO2 regulator was a little bit leaky. So leaky, in fact, that it was flying around the kitchen at one point, and I thought the world was basically ending.
Those things are cold as well, aren't they, when they go off, so you can't really touch them.
Yeah, that was exactly it. Like, the leak was really, really bad, and it was pouring out, and initially I was trying to wrestle it to tighten it, and then it got so cold I had to drop it, and then like just the 2 or 3 meter long pipe coming off it was whipping round like an angry snake. And I Heather, my girlfriend, was in the kitchen, and I was like, "Get out the kitchen, it's gonna blow."
It's kind of making me think of sort of classic 90s disaster movies like Twister and things where there's some sort of out of control force.
It reminded me of, like, it happens in all these kind of action movies where there's there's some water on the floor, and then there's a loose electric cable that's jumping around, and everyone's like, "Ah!" It was a bit like that.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Except it was freezing cold
CO2.
Terminator killing CO2.
Yeah, I mean, if CO2 can take out the Terminator, I was in real danger.
Oh yeah.
Was it CO2 or was it liquid nitrogen?
No, I think it was liquid nitrogen. But it was cold. It's all I was saying is it's fucking cold. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, I mean, the whole CO2 regulator was like frosted and frozen by the end of it, just leaking everywhere. It was proper cold. And I didn't have the wherewithal to shove it then in the fridge and help chill down my poor hacked homebrew fridge that in 36 degree heat in London was trying to crash this beer down to 2 degrees. Yes. It was buzzing pretty loud at my desk for about 3 days before it got there.
Oh, God.
But that's in the second episode as well. Anyway, so let's dive into the comments, shall we? Do you want to go first, Bradders?
Yeah, I'm going to get right to it, Johnny. Pack Attack commented, recipe. The people want to know, Johnny, are we going to give them a recipe?
We are 100% going to give you the recipe. So having tasted it, and once we've got Verdant's feedback, we're going to do some little tweaks to it to make sure it's perfect, and then we're going to publish it on our website, which is craftbeerchannel.com, with a blog that also explains all of the processes that we went through to make sure that we avoided oxidation, got maximum hop flavour utilisation, and all the temperatures that we use, because that is really vital to getting this style right. Like, people always talk about, is brewing an art or a science? And the truth is it's both. Half of it is art because it's like cooking, it's picking that recipe, and the other half is science and it's attention to detail and it's numbers. So we've done all the hard work for you, but you've just got to follow it as closely as possible. So we're going to give you every bit of information that we possibly can. And yeah, that'll be live on Wednesday when the episode 2 goes. So we're definitely giving you the recipe.
Nice.
I enjoyed the response to that comment, which was like, if you zoom in when he's using Brewer's Friend, you can see it. And I was like, that is committed. And I'm glad we shoot in true HD.
Yes. And this is a thing we're going to be doing, hopefully, with most of our homebrew content, where we're going to be quite open access, aren't we, with what we're doing. So we're going to be giving recipes that you can kind of follow along with and use our videos as guides, and that goes in terms of like the equipment we're using, everything as well. We're going to kind of be quite specific about it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's joyous about the homebrew community is how open people are with their information, and a lot of professional brewers as well. It's not the first time Verdant have given away a recipe. Brewdog give away every single recipe they make. They just have an online PDF and they just update it each time with the recipe. Their recipes, they are a little bit vague, to be fair. They don't give you often exact timings, or if they're using fruit, they don't give you the exact fruits or where they got them from, stuff like that. We'll be giving all of that information because, just saying add orange peel is not that helpful. You want to know, which oranges, from where, how much. Should you take the white pith off of that peel, or do you want that bitterness? All this kind of stuff that we'll be giving, mostly from what we've learned through our own mistakes.
Brilliant.
So we will post that recipe next Wednesday. There was also somebody saying that we should put a kit together with Malt Miller, which we are definitely going to ask to do. That would be a lot of fun to get you guys to be able to just go to the Malt Miller, or maybe we need to find an international partner as well as Malt Miller, a partner in every location, so that you guys can just buy the kit and taste what we're tasting.
Great stuff. Legendary worldwide. We'll be able to brew our clone beers and our experiments wherever you may be.
That would be good, wouldn't it? So we got loads of more kind of technical homebrew questions in the comments. Many of them are actually things that we're going to address in episode 2. So I won't go too much into those ones. Things like, somebody just asked, how did you avoid oxidation? And I'm like, that is literally what episode 2 is. So I'm just going to say, wait 7 days. But yeah, we got lots of questions around the hops that we were adding to the hot side. So somebody said that they've been on some homebrew forums where lots of people were only doing 30-minute boils because you're adding so little hops, so few hops during the actual boil. Why would you boil for an hour? So the point of the boil originally, there's lots of chemical processes that happen there, but it's also sanitizing that beer, so there's definitely no microbes when you add your yeast, and it's boiling off some less tasty compounds like DMS, which tastes kind of like popcorn, which is pretty distracting, or creamed corn. So we did a full hour boil, and that was actually because we just wanted to make sure we got plenty of bitterness in there with that massive 3-gram hop addition of Magnum. But, I've read lots of studies. There's lots of great blogs. I'm struggling to remember the name of the study that was done by a home brewer, but I will dig it out and put it in the show notes. But they did an experiment where this guy has an amazing blog where he will test a theory. So somebody will have said to him, do you really need to boil for an hour? And he's done a blind taste test having brewed where he's only boiled for half an hour, where he's boiled for an hour, and maybe he did a 90-minute boil as well. And he then does the blind taste test and gives you his findings. So I'll link to that. But basically, you don't actually need to boil for an hour. If there's no reason for you to do so, if you don't have a complicated hop addition regime, as far as I know, there's no reason to boil for more than half an hour. You shouldn't boil for less than that, I don't think, but you can get away with a half-hour boil, which, when you're brewing at home and it's costing you a lot of electricity, might be a good thing to know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess we could, it'd be kind of cool to explore that ourselves. Maybe we do that in a video where we just we do a kind of vertical tasting where we've got the same brew but done with slightly different parameters, whether that be the boil or when the additions are going in and all that kind of stuff. Because it's all chemistry, isn't it, Johnny, really, at the end of the day, which is all kind of amazing, weird stuff. Things are getting broken down and new things are being formed.
Yeah.
It's very exciting, Johnny.
It's a wildly complicated chemical process that just hundreds of years of technology and experimentation has actually boiled it down, excuse the pun, to quite a simple process on the face of it. But what it means is tiny changes that you might make thinking this is fine or this is fine or this will be excellent actually have a huge impact. So, you going, I've learned the hard way, if you miss your mash strike temperature, you're 2-3 degrees over, the amount of fermentable sugar you're going to get out of that mash could be significantly reduced and stuff like that. So it is a matter of hitting numbers. We got another comment from Craig Nielsen. So he said there's a 300 plus page thread on Homebrew Talk for brewing New England IPAs, and the consensus there is biotransformation is a bit of a hoax / highly efficient, and dry hopping post-fermentation reduces hop burn and grassiness. So this is alluding to the fact that most New England IPAs are what is called double dry hopped. So that means adding a dose of hops during active fermentation, which is pretty unusual. So just a couple of days after you've pitched your yeast, you pitch in some more hops, and then adding the rest of it right at the end of fermentation, usually at a colder temperature. So he's saying that early addition, there's lots of people saying that it's kind of a hoax. And the idea of it is that during fermentation, the yeast is chomping away at all kinds of sugars, and it actually biotransforms the hop flavours by chomping down those compounds and changes the flavours you get and might increase kind of stone fruit kind of flavours. Craig is completely right, and the 300-page thread is completely right in that it's highly inefficient. I wouldn't say it's a hoax, like there's lots of academic papers that explain that it definitely does happen, but how much of an impact it has on the sensory of the beer, so the literal flavours of it, is kind of the jury's still out. And we get into that a little bit in episode 2 as well. But just so that people know, if people are planning anything, we do DDH. We do add a small addition during active fermentation to try and tease out a little bit more flavour, which is mostly down to the fact that we won't get the hop extraction that James does. James does not do biotransformation. He thinks he's probably getting it just from his whirlpool hops, so he doesn't add any extra hops in. But we do, because we're not going to get the same extraction as him. So, yeah, if you want to read that 300-page thread on Homebrew Talk, please go ahead, or watch episode 2 of the Craft Beer Channel's Odyssey and New England IPA, and I'll summarise it again in about a minute. But yeah, that's our plan, and we're sticking to it. Maybe at some point we'll do an experiment where we brew a New England IPA, one with biotransformation hops and one without, and see if we can tell the difference.
Love it. Let's do it.
That would be a cool video. Another cool video, I just remembered, talking about Brewdog earlier and their recipes that they give away. So they give you the recipe for the original Punk IPA, which was brewed in 2007, which has Motueka in it. And was 6%, so a little bit stronger. And then they give you the recipe for the 2010 version, which has Nelson Sauvin in instead, and is 5.6. And I think it'd be super cool to brew both of those side by side and literally taste how Punk used to taste and how it does taste now, which is not something many people have managed to do.
I'd love that.
So that'd be another cool video. Because I still think, cool. I don't know what you think, Brad, Punk IPA on draft when fresh is still a delicious beer. I think Brewdog's watering down of their recipes is probably a falsehood.
Yeah, I mean, totally. When you're drinking it and you're getting it and it's been treated well, draft, it's amazing. It's great. I always enjoy it, man. That was definitely one of the beers I was drinking quite early on. That certainly UK side beers, I was like, fucking hell, there's something happening here, and I think it still holds up amazingly well.
Yeah, I think when you compare it with beers that it's like, so other West Coast IPAs, it still stands up pretty well. It is a little bit less hoppy, but I think it's got a lovely balance between the malt and some big piney, citrusy hop aromas. I don't really get the Nelson Sauvin, but we've never really analysed it, have we? We've just had a pint of it, whereas if we put it in a snifter glass, we probably would. So yeah, I think it's a great beer, and I think the reason people have started disliking it is A, because it's it's often not very well looked after. It's sat on a shelf in a supermarket in a bottle or whatever, and B, because I think people compare it to New England IPAs. They think, oh, it's an IPA, I'm going to get this juicy, sweet, overripe mango vibe, and when they get orange peel, pine, resin, caramel, they're like, huh? That's not what I want for my IPA. So I don't know why the guy talks like an idiot. Maybe that's just my voice, but it sounded like an idiot. So yeah, I think really what's changed is our palates, not Punk IPA that much.
Yeah, definitely. It's our palates, and it's our kind of hopes of what we think an IPA should be, which is drastically different these days to 5 years ago, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's still great. I still love, like we've talked about this quite often, that we New England IPAs, when they first came out, we were like, wow, these are so refreshing and so sessionable, but they do get a bit too sweet, a little bit cloying. If you go back from drinking one of those to a West Coast guy, that is refreshing, and Absolutely. That just cuts through everything. It resets everything. It kind of kills your palate as well, obviously, but
kills it in a different way. Yeah,
kills it in a different way.
Yeah,
and I still got love for the West Coast, West Side.
Yeah, I mean that's what craft beer is all about. It's all about variety. So having two very different styles of IPA is great, and they all deserve equal love. And there are much better West Coast IPAs out there than Punk, but it is a good West Coaster, and it's the best pint you'll get in a British airport.
Defo. Without a doubt.
Every trip we've ever done abroad has probably started with a Punk IPA in a Wetherspoon, isn't it?
Oh, that's a bad thing to admit, but yeah, probably.
Well, I've got a boycott of Wetherspoons generally, but my rule is except in airports.
There's no other options.
Well, the other option is not to drink, but that's not really an option.
That's not an option, Johnny. We know this.
Yeah, it's true.
City Airport. I think City Airport didn't have a Wetherspoons. We were drinking in a non-Wetherspoons pub. I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah, but I still think we had Punk IPA.
I think we did too. Maybe they've done some big deal with all of the airports.
Got an airport exclusivity vibe. That's where all their volume's coming from. All their growth, just from people on their way to, I don't know, Prague, having a Punk IPA before their stag do starts. Not anymore, dickheads.
Not anymore. This is making me think of my Brewdog Airlines flight when we all drank a bit too much Punk, and the toilets had to be closed on the flight about 3 hours before touchdown, and they nearly had to divert the flight to New York because it was quite a serious situation. Everyone was pissed up on the flight and very merry, and everyone needed a wee for a prolonged period of time. So it got a bit dicey towards the end, but that was a wild ride.
Mundane, silly, and privileged disaster movie on a plane.
Yeah, a
real twist on snakes on a plane.
It was great. Well, there were certainly some snakes that needed to be watered on the plane.
Snakes that needed to be watered. There's the tagline: "These snakes need to be watered."
Oh dear. Oh dear.
I'm not sure even Samuel L. Jackson would sign up to that movie turd.
No.
Right. Well, we've on that note. Is that the name of the podcast? I'm not sure Samuel L. Jackson would sign up to that movie turd. I don't know. Might be a bit long. We'll find one. So that is 22 minutes. We've gone over. So I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I hope you enjoyed our video from this week. We've got episode 2 coming next Wednesday, and then the week after that, hopefully, we've got a tour of Thornbridge, which is dead exciting. But that's all dependent on a rather large life event that's happening to me next week.
Johnny,
which
very exciting.
We'll get into in next week's podcast. So bear with us until Wednesday, when there'll be the recipe and the video to New England IPA, and B, all the answers to all of the queries that you guys put in the first video comment section. Hopefully. It's actually really good because I've been using those questions and I've been checking everything's in that second video. So I've actually added some little bits off the back of what you guys have been saying. So please do comment if you have a question, even if you think it's silly. Stick it in there because it might influence the next few videos that we do, particularly with the homebrew stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's everything. Anything to add, Brad?
Only that everybody, we love you. Please stay safe out there in the real world. And next week's a very exciting week for your man Johnny. So I'm looking forward to celebrating with him and his partner. So let's all get excited about that, Johnny.
The Bubble Podcast is brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's craft beer channel. Head to youtube.com/the craft beer channel to watch this week's video and over 400 more exciting episodes. If you love what we do, please do subscribe and even join our Patreon at patreon.com/craft beer channel. Love and beer.